Okay. You know what? Yeah, it's time to move on. Okay. All right, so welcome back to, sorry. Welcome back to Oil Painting, Jersey Shore Landmarks. This is week 4 of 6 at the beautiful Ocean County Artists Guild. I'm broadcasting this for those who are not here today. What I'm going to start with is we're going to talk about color. Prior to this class, we learned about how to start a painting with a grayscale, the grisaille, and now we're going to talk about color before we add color. So I have this nice little presentation. Some of you have already seen this. Oh, it's not letting me interact. There we go. Okay. So here we go. Okay, so this is a little bit of the rundown on color theory and practice. Some of you may have had this before, some of you haven't. This is a picture of the traditional color wheel, you know, what we would normally experience. In a perfect world, if pigments were perfect, you know, we have, let me go to the next slide. Here we have, you know, our primaries, red, yellow, and blue, secondary, orange, violet, and green, and then our tertiary colors, yellow, orange, red, violet, blue, green, and yellow, green. And here they are nicely arranged, and you guys have a copy of this. So what I like to go over is the different color schemes that so that it can help you understand better how to use color in a way that could be more aesthetically pleasing. And a little knowledge goes a long way. These aren't rules. It's just an option for you. It's just a tool to put in your toolbox. So again, the 3 color schemes that you saw on the previous chart was primary. The primary colors, and you see this in the triangle, primary colors, red, yellow, and blue. Then the secondary colors, a secondary color scheme is one that has orange, green, and purple. And the third is complementary, and that is a contrasting color scheme where any 2 colors are directly opposite each other on the wheel. So in other words, we have blue and orange, red and green, yellow and violet. Those are 3 examples. But you could go all around the color wheel, even with the tertiary colors, and find their complements. To go along with this, I have examples of art from art history, famous works that reflect those color schemes. The first one is the Mondrian, composition 2 in red, blue, and yellow. Red, blue, and yellow plus black and white. We have Van Gogh's Irises, which is a great example of a secondary color scheme, which, you know, again, it has the orange, the green, and the violet. And then the Sunrise by Monet is a beautiful example of a complementary color scheme. It has blues and oranges in it. Now, Susan has a complementary color scheme in her painting. She has violets and yellows, right? Violets and yellows in yours, which is another reason why that painting and even her, of course, her source photo is really beautiful. So there are more color schemes that we can take a look at, depending on how advanced you want to get. But even the first three will go a long way to improving your use of color. These three, we have analogous, warm versus cool, and the triad. An analogous color scheme is a harmonious color palette. Excuse me. It has 3 to 5 adjacent hues on the color wheel sharing a common color, such as blue, blue-green, and green. So they all share a common color. And you could go all around the color wheel, for the various analogous color schemes. We have, yellow, green, yellow, and yellow-orange. We have the yellow that ties those together. And you could even go orange and red. But you could even go orange with that because you still have yellow and maybe even the red-orange because there's still yellow there. So again, 3 to 5 colors. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So any 3 to 5 around the color wheel. Next is warm versus cool. We have this nice split here, the warm colors being the yellows, the oranges, and the reds. And then the cool colors being the greens, blues, and violets. And then we have what's called a triad. Now, red, yellow, and blue is considered a triad. We commonly know them as the primary colors, but they're also known as a triad. If you go around the color wheel, you could find other triads that would be beautiful to work with, like red, orange, blue, violet, and yellow, green. That's an example of another triad that you see on the chart. It's basically any 3 colors equally spaced from each other on the wheel. So we have, with the analogous color scheme, we have color harmony. With the triad, we have color contrast. So, with regard to the principles and elements of design, color is no different in the sense that we like to see differences. And contrast in your color scheme gives the viewer the differences that might make the color scheme more exciting. So again, to follow in the previous example, I pulled some famous artworks that are examples, beautiful examples of those color schemes. We have Sunflowers by Van Gogh. And for warm versus cool, I have 2 paintings. One, the Red Cana by Georgia O'Keeffe that has the reds, the yellows, and the oranges. And then I picked one for a cool representative, which is a painting from Picasso's blue period called The Old Guitarist. And then the triad that I picked was Shot Blue Marilyn by Andy Warhol, and you could see the red, yellow, and blue palette there. So for our next, even more complex, except with the exception of the monochromatic color scheme, we have split complementary, double split complementary, and then of course the monochromatic. Now, the underpainting that we did, I'm going to start with that even though it's listed third. Monochromatic harmony, it's a single color in a range of hues, tints, shades, or tones. In this case, you see 3 different monochromatic color schemes that are considered tints because they're mixed with white. You could swap out the white for black, and you're still in the realm of monochromatic color schemes. If you pick one of those colors and you mix it with white and then you took it and mixed it with black, you'd still be in the monochromatic world, and you could include that in your painting. The split complementary color scheme is when it has both harmony and contrast, because what you're doing is you're picking one key color, okay? In this case, in this example, it's the yellow, and then instead of picking the direct complement, which would be the violet, you split it up between the tertiary colors that are on either side, which is the red violet and the blue violet instead of just the violet along with the yellow. And you could go all around the color wheel to discover split complements. Now, most color wheels, a lot of the color wheels that you buy, you could see this on the color wheel. Split complement is here. This triangle right here, there's complement, and it also says split complement. So even if you don't know off the top of your head what that is, the color wheel will tell you, which is nice. And I can pass this around to show you. And the double split complement is, okay, so you pick two colors, the key color yellow, the complement is violet, but instead of picking the yellow or the violet, you pick the colors on either side of the complements, and that's a double split complement. Again, another color scheme with harmony and contrast. And then we already went over monochromatic. And I'm going to switch to the next page, and you'll see that we have famous works of art that reflect those color schemes. For the split complement, here's the Milkmaid by Vermeer. For a double split complement, we have Monet's House of Parliament. And then for monochromatic, I picked Marcel Duchamp's Nude Descending a Staircase. It has both tints and shades with the one color, which makes it a great example to show you. So what are the benefits of learning about color schemes? Well, it inspires us to try new and different color combinations. They help us to create the emotion, energy, or mood we would like our painting to convey. They inspire us to choose a limited palette that will help us to achieve color harmony in our compositions. And also, there is a website that I listed here where you can learn more about famous historical works that effectively use color schemes. And it's drawpaintacademy.com/color schemes. So how do we put all this theory into practice? Well, you also have a copy of what's called the Color Bias Wheel. The Color Bias Wheel is authored by an artist named Michael Wilcox, and he wrote a book called Blue and Yellow Don't Make Green. And as you can see in this particular color wheel, the red, the yellow, and the blue are whited out, because in reality, when it comes to pigments, there's no such thing as pure primaries. So this color wheel, even though it shows you red, yellow, and blue, okay, this represents a perfect world. This doesn't mean that if you use that color wheel, the traditional color wheel, that if I just slide this around and I pick any old red and I pick any old blue and I pick any old yellow, that I'm going to get exactly what's on this color wheel. Yes?
Blue is blue, and you do so this wheel I don't see. Blue, you can't make blue.
Well, correct. In theory, yes, because it's a primary. Although there are pigments that you can mix together, like secondary colors that you can mix together to make blue, believe it or not. There are secondary colors that you can mix together to create yellow, which is very interesting. That's a whole other aside. That would be a fun little presentation to do, because but in general, no, we don't, you can't generally get primaries from other colors. Okay. But anyway, so, all right, there are no pure pigments in the world of pigments. That's why the primary colors are left blank, because in the world of pigments, pigments do what's called, they lean. And what that means is that you pick a tube of red paint that you have in your box. It's going to lean either orange or violet, okay? If you pick the blue out of your paint box, it's going to lean either violet or green. If you pick a yellow out of your paint box, it's going to lean green or orange. And that's important, useful information that you can use when you're trying to mix colors and trying to get the exact color that you need. On this page, it shows what's called the Pigment color wheel. This was authored by Bruce McAvoy. And this paint color wheel arranges paint pigments, which is indicated by the P number on the tube of paint, around the color wheel. So you see how crazy this is. Okay, you see how, okay, so these are the yellows, these are the reds, these are the blues, and these are the greens. And you could see all these little dots, these little color dots, represent colors of paint that come in tubes. And as you can see, none of them fall exactly in a spot, one particular spot on the color wheel. So the only reason why I bring this up is just to show you that how this adds a bit of complexity to color mixing, and to help you realize that it's not you. It's not you. It's not you. There's nothing wrong with you. The fact that you use the color wheel and you tried to mix a color and it didn't come out the way you expected. It's because we all haven't been armed with the understanding of the pigments that make up the colors in our paint tubes. So a little bit of education goes a long way to helping us be able to mix colors that we need. Okay. So how do we address this? Well, one of the ways is by creating your own basic color chart. And what I have here is I gave you guys this chart that you can use with the paints in your box. And it's just a basic 2-color mixing chart. You put swatches of all the colors on the top and then along the side. It's like times tables, okay? Where, now you'll see that this is grayed out because what happens is it becomes, if you could see in this example, this is actually becomes a mirror. So I gray out one of the triangles so that you're not, mixing too much. This makes it more efficient. But anyway, what you're doing is you're mixing each color in your box with each other. And it's just a basic 2-color mixing chart that when you use it with the colors in your box, will at least give you a reference that you can use so that when you're trying to figure out what color to mix, you at least know what will get you in the ballpark so that it can help you. It's a tool to help take the guesswork out, okay, of your color mixing. So again, you use the paints in your box, you mix each of the colors with each color you have, and the 2-color mixing chart will serve as a great place to start to help you identify colors in your painting that are in the general ballpark of what you will need. So everybody should have one of these in their toolbox because it does go a long way to helping you when you're just starting out with color mixing to be able to better predict what a mixture will be that will get you close to what you need. So I had 2 different examples. One was oil, this one was acrylics. It doesn't matter. You could use this for watercolors. You could use it for gouache. You could use it for inks. Whatever you have, whatever color medium you have, you can use this type of chart to help you with color mixing. And I might have mentioned Richard SCHMID before. He actually passed away. He's like a modern master. He passed away, like, I think over a year ago now. He wrote a book called Alla Prima too. It's like considered like one of the Bibles of painting. And he said, this is what a master artist knows about color. I wanted to quote him. He says, "I know this simple fact when painting from life. All I have to do is correctly identify a color I see in my subject as a specific pigment or mixture of pigments, and then put it on my canvas in the right place. Nothing more." Right? See it right, mix what I see right, and then stick it where it belongs. Doesn't that sound so simple? Yeah, right. So I thought that you'd get a kick out of that. But I also wanted to add to this, just remember though, that it's okay to paint the colors you feel instead. If you see a hint of a color in any particular reference that excites you and you want to play it up, give yourself permission to do that. Because that's part of being an artist and being more expressive. And being the type of artist that helps the viewer see the beauty in things that they might not take the time to see. So just allow yourself that. I have some other color notes here about the physical properties of paint. There are some colors are more transparent and some colors are more opaque. That's also a nature of pigments. Some are more opaque and some are more transparent. And knowing which ones are opaque and transparent can also go a long way, especially when we want to glaze colors over, like, say, a grayscale painting. Then that type of information could be helpful. You might then want to pick a transparent red versus an opaque red, and knowing that type of information is on your paint tube. Okay. Purity, one pure pigment versus combinations. Look at the P number. If there's more than one, there's a good indication that it's a color that you can mix rather than purchase. Okay. So in other words, save your money. You don't have to buy every color of the rainbow. Okay. You can have, fewer colors. Warms and cools of each primary plus a few extra colors is really all you need to be able to mix almost any color you need. Okay. Unless it's a particular favorite mixture that you're going to use over and over again and use a lot of and you want to save yourself some time, then that's another thing. But when you're starting out, don't do that. You don't know yet what colors are going to be your favorites or what you're going to be drawn to subject-wise. Some of us are going to need more blues and greens because we like to paint oceans. Other people are going to need more earth tones because maybe they like to paint deserts. I don't know. You need to figure that out for yourself later. You start out with the basics and then you add. Chemical versus natural. Some pigments are chemically derived, other are earthen. Your yellow ochres, bone black, burnt sienna. Those are, more your earth type pigments. And then you have other chemical, like your phthalo blues, phthalo greens, your quinacridone colors. Those are all more chemical type derived pigments. Not that that matters. Really, all you need to know, I'm giving you this extra information. Really, what you need to know is, how do I mix the color that I want? Okay, this just gives you more insight into why you might have difficulty, and it's just additional helpful information to help you understand. So other color notes about, that have to do with applying the theory. Hue and local color. Those are the color references that we use in ordinary conversation. A red apple, red roses. That's what hue refers to. Relativity is when a color appears different under different circumstances. Sometimes orange is good. If you have a square and you paint an orange, a blue square, and you paint orange in that particular blue, and then you paint that same orange square within a square of another color, even though it's the same orange, it might look different because it's next to a different color. It's like an optical illusion sometimes. So that's what relativity means. The influence of surrounding colors in that case, but also the ambient light illuminating a subject. Sometimes, the light from a window could appear to be cool in a still life, whereas if it's artificial light, that could appear to be warm. So whether or not the light source is warm or cool, that affects the color that you see as well. Saturation. Saturation refers to it could be how intense the pigments are. And you can desaturate a color by mixing it with other colors, whether it's a complement, whether it's black and white. Whenever you start mixing a color with another color, you're desaturating that color that's in the tube, that you got out of the tube. So just remember that. But if you really, really want to dull a color, the most dull you can make it is by picking the color opposite it on the color wheel. So if you need a gray or a brown to put in your painting, instead of picking a tube of brown, if you have complementary colors in your color scheme, think about if you need a gray or a brown, think about mixing those instead. This way you have a gray or a brown that's harmonious with the colors that are already in your painting. Intensity, that refers to pure pigment straight out of the tube. They're the loudest and brightest and look at me that you'll ever see. Tinting strength refers to the ability of a pigment to change with the hue of white or another pigment. So, for example, it's going to take a lot more yellow ochre to change the color of white than it will to put phthalo blue. Or alizarin crimson or cadmium red. You need very little of red to change white. Then you need a color like yellow ochre or even maybe burnt sienna. It's tinting strength refers to how strong and how much pigment and concentrated it is. Color families, primary, secondary, tertiary, we talked about color families. Color harmony, we talked about that through our discussion. Colors and basically color harmony just refers to the fact that colors like to be with other colors. If you think of it that way, then that goes a long way. Color temperature, warm versus cold, we talked about that. Value and tone, we've beaten that with a dead horse with our grayscale, adding in the darks and then adding in the lights. So here, going to creating your own color chart, which we don't really have time to do that in this class, but again, blank color mixing chart that I gave you. To make the color chart, I would just use a palette knife. Don't use brushes. It's harder to get pure color mixtures when you're using a brush and you're rinsing it and not rinsing all the paint out. Use a palette knife, place it on the chart with the palette knife, wipe off the palette knife and move on. You'll get it done a lot quicker. Don't sit there swishing a brush in water, if I could give you that. And you use whatever colors are in your box, because using somebody else's colors isn't going to be as helpful. Because when you go home with your own paints and you're trying to mix colors, you're not going to get the same result as somebody who has, maybe they had student grade paints and you have artist grade paints, which are, have less fillers, then that's going to affect your mix. So now I gave you this in the materials list, but I'm just going to go over a list of paint colors that are representative of warms and cools of the primaries, plus the extras that I recommend. Cad yellow light reflects green, so that would be considered a cool. Cadmium yellow is warm because it reflects orange, and that would be the painting of the sunflower, or that would be an example. So a sunny yellow reflects orange, that would be a warm yellow. Cad red light is an example of a warm red, and cadmium red is also considered a warm red because that reflects orange. Alizarin crimson, on the other hand, crimson's quinacridone red, quinacridone magenta, the pinks, they reflect cools. They reflect violets, so they're considered to be cool reds. Cerulean blue reflects green. Cobalt blue reflects violet. Ultramarine blue reflects violet. Yellow ochre is a warmer. Burnt sienna. Burnt sienna is considered to be dark orange. Actually, that's why when you mix it with the blue, if you did that in your underpainting, you ended up with a desaturated, grayed out brown. Because the blue and the orange and the burnt sienna are complements. So they brown out or gray out each other. Burnt umber is considered to be a cool earthen brown. And then ivory black. Ivory black is considered to be cooler, I think, because it reflects a lot of blue. And actually, if you mix ivory black with yellows, you can get green out of it because of the blue in it. That's the benefit of knowing. That's an example of the benefit of knowing about pigments, is that when you know what colors are reflected, again, you can in your head you'll eventually learn how, how this works. Here's a little example of how to mix. Okay, here I have cerulean blue in this example and cadmium yellow, and then the green that results. You squeeze out the two colors on the palette, use the palette knife to place swatches of colors from the tube in the first row and then down the column, and then you mix it like times tables. You try to get the in-between. All right. And here's just some more examples of the color. And then eventually you learn how to do a color study with a thumbnail. And I have some examples of that. So in this example here, I used the color chart to choose the color mixes that were close to what I would need for the painting. I listed those over here and put the swatches over here and labeled those. And then I went ahead and mixed, and these are the resulting colors that I used in the little thumbnail painting. So that's an example of that. And I'm going to put out some of these color studies out, like the actual real ones, so that you can get up closer to see them and, understand better. Here's another example in oils, another color study. These, I'm sorry, sure.
The last slide, what did you call that color?
This color scheme?
Yeah.
Oh, it is based mostly on primaries. It's pretty much it started out as a primary color scheme. And you can see here it's still pretty primary, except it's more muted. There's muted blues, there's red violets, and there are some warmer like yellows and peachy tones in there too. So it ended up being, I guess what you would consider more of an off primary for that reason, but has a strong primary undertone to it. Yeah, and there were some extra colors thrown in there too. I think I used unbleached titanium in this case too, which was nice. Now here, I started out with all these colors, right, and did a whole bunch of mixtures, and then this is actually the limited palette on the bottom of what I ended up with actually using in the painting. So what happens is, I start with the basic chart, but it might take me a couple of different down mixtures to get to what I really need. But at least I know where my starting point is, and I'm not just going blindly into it, So it saves me some time that way. And then doing just a little thumbnail painting for a study also goes a long way, because if I figure that out ahead of time, just by doing that little thumbnail painting, it might not have every single color that I'll put in the painting, but it has the major colors in it, and it saves me a whole lot of time and effort when I go to the painting. Now, eventually, you might not have to do this anymore, but when you're starting out, it's very, very helpful, I find, to do this. Like this one, look at how primary those colors are to start with, right? And then I went down and I did these mixtures, and I only ended up using these colors. But I didn't waste that much paint to figure it out, right? I didn't waste the paint on my large canvas. I did my little thumbnail, and I knew ahead of time, based on that study, those are the only colors I had, and it was only basically a handful. And I went ahead and did that little painting. I think I have that with me. It's not finished, but... Okay, so this was choosing a reference. All right, in this case, it was a flower. Okay, and then that was that color chart. And I think I have the actual color study I did for this. So that is that's the study. So we'll get out of this. And I think I showed you a little example of, let me switch back here. Oh, I'm going to get out of this. And I'm going to go back to, all right. So I have the color wheel here. I'm going to go and get some paint tubes. And I'm going to put it around the color wheel. Okay, so let's see. I have ultramarine blue, which leans violet, so I'm going to put that towards the violet. Let's move this back here. What other colors? Cerulean blue reflects green, so I'm going to put that here. Okay, that's on the blue-green side. Quinacridone magenta is more of it on the violet side. Or alizarin crimson. Let me put alizarin crimson here because that's a color that most of us probably have. Cadmium yellow deep is a yellow orange. I'm going to put that. Whereas cad yellow light reflects more green, so I'm going to put that towards the green. I have cadmium red medium. That is a red that looks warmer. And you could see, look how much warmer that looks than the alizarin crimson, right? You could see the difference. About instead because that's more full. Cobalt blue. That's what I was looking for. There it is. Cobalt blue. Cobalt blue is another blue that reflects more violet. We have cobalt, but ultramarine is actually, it's darker in value. So those are your primaries, okay? The warms and cools of each primary. In addition, this is, well, this is called yellow oxide, but it's like yellow ochre. Burnt sienna. Burnt umber. And where's it going? And then of course, black and white. Black and white. Other colors, but these aren't necessarily colors that you need to get. Phthalo blue. Phthalo blue is also reflects green. Okay, you can make some really beautiful ocean blues out of that. But it's obviously darker in value than the cerulean blue. The cerulean blue has more white in it. Phthalo blue is actually, well, it says opaque, but I think it's a little bit more transparent than the cerulean blue. The cerulean blue has white in it, which is, I love cerulean blue for skies, to include in a sky, especially towards the horizon. Towards the top of the sky where you might want it to get darker, I might throw in some like cobalt blue, maybe some ultramarine blue, depending on, I'm just talking about a sunny day. But what I also like to do is I like to take a little bit of burnt sienna, just a tiny bit, to desaturate my blue a little bit, especially towards the horizon line because it's further away and it normally is more grayed out. Well, there's cloud horizon. But anyway, you can actually see that it is grayer anyway. Great. Okay. All right. You- Okay. So there's a color chart. I need to. Example of a color chart. Here's a little apple. I actually even saved some of my. This is the demo painting, the little one from that one color study. This is, I actually saved the palette. I actually saved the palette from this painting so you could see the mixtures. How I started with the oh, okay. And this goes palette. Let's bring this up better. Oops. All right. There we go. Let me take this. So I want to put more detail on this. Okay, so that's the palette. Always dealing with. I'll move that in a second. Okay. All right. So we got that. So color chart. This was my reference photo, which is really dull. Very, very dull. I'm going to put that over here, though. Let's move this. Show you. Okay, so this was the actual color study. This was the palette that I used. That was the reference, and this was that painting, just to show you in detail what the whole process was. Let's move this here. I got my color chart, reference, color chart reference. This was that was the resulting larger painting from here. So that's that. Then here, that's this one here is that color study, the actual one that I showed you on the screen. Here is that was the color study. Color study for that. So this painting isn't done. It's just a little painting, but at least you could say this is the whole process of figuring out the colors. Just dealing with color. I did have an underpainting that you could still see, which was very gray. It was actually a real grayscale because with just the grays because was such a gray day. And here I haven't put any sky holes or anything in. I just treated that as a shape, so I have to go back in there. So, it's, it needs work, but, it's a good start. And I turned up some of the colors that I saw a little bit. Like, I decided that it was going to be more of a complementary scheme. So I picked more reds and greens, reds and greens, red violets and greens. So you'll see more of, red violets. The red violets are turned up and the greens are turned up. Still very muted because of the conditions of, that were that day, which was all overcast. But, lighting conditions are important. It affects how we see color. It affects how bright or intense or washed out our colors are. That's much it. So, any questions? About? Oh my gosh. Well, it's definitely going to look like something. Yeah, so if you want to come here. I didn't, until you start playing around with color, you do find beauty in everything. Even a gray day, I think, looks fabulous. There's just something very peaceful about that I was drawn to, even though it wasn't, it might seem a little dull. Dull is okay. We need to rest once in a while. So.
So this is the first one you did. It's all the same thing.
This was the first one. Yeah. Okay, so let's move this over. Since that doesn't fall. Okay, so that's the first one. These all go together because, well, no. This is so
That's a full color chart.
Hmm?
That's a full color chart.
Yeah, that one was full because it was. I did, but it's here. And
You know,
we all discover what our preferences are. Yeah, that was a color study for the hibiscus painting that I had in here. Yeah, this was something that, when I have a longer class or when I have the color theory class, we really delve into that.
I think I need to take color theory. I think there should be an order. They recommend just taking it.
I said that.
Because I'm just taking
I would
it.
like a curriculum.
Because to me, I'm just taking it sporadically. I haven't had any.
This, doing something like this can really help you understand color.
I just sort of mix it.
Yeah, and
this
you know
is
what?
very helpful.
When it comes to color, that's the single most helpful thing. And
I've done
actually,
that before.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, like for watercolor, I printed it out or attempted to print it out on watercolor paper, and you can, do it with watercolors. It doesn't matter what the medium is. The theory applies to every color medium. So even if like it doesn't matter. Pastel.
I went from the watercolor first. Said watercolor pencil, but I just color.
Yeah.
And then I went back to your drawing.
Yeah.
I did some acrylic with Sally Corneliuson, but she doesn't teach schools. She does a little bit, but not as deep as you do. Colors.
Yeah, I find that I just find that it's really helpful. And
Probably doing
yeah, pretty quickly. And you know, I've come up with some, you know, ways of working. Now it's to the point now where eventually what will happen is you're going to be out somewhere and you're going to see something, right? Like, "Ooh, that's painting." And what piece of paint I'm going to mix that yellow. But yes, I'm just looking at
I first watercolor in class. It's of that pavilion, but the lines are over off. I didn't know how to do that, so I just did play, you know.
Well, I definitely think that
I definitely,
yeah,
maybe
like
that's
a creative.
maybe you should know. Yeah, that would be the school district curriculum. Those introductions.
I think he needs to.
But I could have done it 6 times.
Well, you know, there's different things to learn. You know, you can.
Because there's a different look in the back of my head.
Yeah.
And you did a little bit.
No, because it was basic. And, but you know, in subsequent classes, you do 2 point, 3 point.
Right. And
point of view is different.
Even if did the same thing with the kids.
Yeah, it would be good with the kids.
Because I remember we had one art teacher that was very sequential, and those kids really got a lot out of it.
When you were yeah, yeah. Because you're supposed to understand the need.
I understood that this.
And you know what? You can learn a lot from playing too.
I notice that the people that come to Thursday class every week, they get better.
Yeah.
You know, the combined with time. You're a great teacher, but this is complex.
Well, you know.
And everyone is very much at a different stage.
Well, but everybody started.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody starts somewhere. Yeah. You start at the beginning, and you know you build your skills. So you know, stay encouraged and just keep practicing, and eventually, you know, by doing things like this, it's really going to help you.
Well, I'm gonna try.
Okay, so I'm going to end the live stream here. And I hope you got a lot of information out of this. We have a couple more weeks to go, so we're going to get more into the practice of helping you mix the colors you need for your paintings. So some of us have started, some of us are farther along, some of us aren't, but if we need to make corrections, we're going to make corrections, and that's it. Yeah.